We recently learned that Microsoft purchased ZeniMax. We're also just a few days away from the next generation of consoles. Also, I'm playing Skyrim for about the 500th time. This seems to me like a good time as any to think about the future of one of our favorite gaming franchises. I'm Ben with Pop Nothing, and today I'm going to talk about some of the things I would like to see in the Elder Scrolls 6.
Oh, nothing.
First, a few disclaimers. I love Skyrim. By the end of this video, some of you might actually question that, but believe me, I absolutely adore this game. That's the reason I'm playing it again for about the 500th time. I'm not particularly familiar with Elder Scrolls Online. So if I mention things in this video that the online service has perhaps addressed or taken care of, I'm unaware of that. Just drop a comment, tell me I'm wrong, point me in the right direction. Fair enough. I don't want anyone to think that I'm picking on the Elder Scrolls. Some of the points I will be making today are actually applicable to a lot of open world RPGs. But because we are talking about the Elder Scrolls, these are the things I'd like to see. Nothing I talk about here will have anything to do with the Microsoft purchase. This isn't about add-ons or business dealings or anything like that. This is strictly about the single-player game of Elder Scrolls 6. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so this one's pretty straightforward. I would like to see it in Hammerfell. I don't feel like the Red Guards got very much love, if you will, in Skyrim. And I would like to look more at their land, their politics, their culture, etc. We had Elder Scrolls 4 in the Imperial City of Cyrodiil. We had Elder Scrolls 5 in the Nordic land of Skyrim. I've heard some people say that they think the next game should be in High Rock, but I'm going to be real honest. I feel like white people have had their turn. I'd like to see it in Hammerfell. Okay, for this one, I'd like to see a little bit more Oblivion and less Skyrim. You don't always have to be the one. You're obviously going to play a pivotal role in the main storyline, but you don't always have to be Neo, Luke, or Harry. It's sometimes okay to just be a part of the narrative and not the narrative. In fact, I actually think this opens up more doors to possibilities in the storyline and also takes some of the pressure off how NPCs treat you. But we'll address that in a little bit. Some players prefer to go in completely solo for the entire game, and that's fine. But some of us like the follower aspect of the Elder Scrolls game. If you are like me, and you do like to have a follower, it would actually be nice to tell some of them apart. Have you ever played with a follower through an entire run? You can spend 100, 200, 300 hours with a follower in your playthrough. And honestly, by the end of it, they don't feel any different than any other follower. What if we could build some kind of rapport or have some kind of relationship with these followers a la the Fallout series? For example, very early in the game, you can recruit Faendal. All you have to do is complete his quest, and he will become your follower. What's his quest? You have to give a forged letter to a lady he likes. That's it. He will pledge his undying loyalty to you for basically passing a note to a girl. And in universe, that really doesn't make sense because he has basically just asked you to better his odds with this woman. And if you do it, the first thing he does is agree to leave town with you forever. That doesn't make sense. Okay, let's say you move on to someone like Mule. You get a little bit of her backstory. Her quest is slightly bigger. So there's a bare minimum kind of rapport and understanding with her. It's certainly better than someone like Faendal, but it's just not quite enough if you really want to build this relationship. So then, of course, we move on to the big one. Probably most people's favorite follower, Serana. Okay, why do we love Serana so much? Well, besides the fact that she's voiced by the amazingly talented Laura Bailey, I think it boils down to our relationship with her. We spend a lot of time with her in the Dawnguard DLC quest. We learn a lot about her past. We learn about who she is. We learn about her family structure, what she feels about particular things, and you really do end up spending a lot of your time in that quest line with her. So by the time you're finished with that, no, you don't have to use her anymore, but you honestly feel invested in her as a character, and you're interested in her, and you've built a bit of a relationship with her, so why not continue going with her? I would really like to see that applied to more of the followers in the game. Now, if you just need a part-time follower, if you just have a particularly difficult dungeon or whatnot that you want to clear, sure, the mercenaries you can hire at the inns, they're fine. They serve that exact purpose. Boom, 500 gold or whatever it is, and run off with them, and that's fine. But if you're looking to spend, again, potentially hundreds of hours with someone in a game, it would be nice to have a relationship with them. All right, so Fallout again. Personally, I think of characters like Boone, or Kate, or Nick Valentine. We were really invested in these people, and we really got to know them, and most people really like these characters. I don't expect the Elder Scrolls to be Fallout, but in this particular case, I think a similarity or two wouldn't be so bad. And speaking of Serana, I see no reason why we can't bring her back. As a vampire, we know she's immortal. Because she was an essential NPC in our playthrough, we know she survived. There's actually no reason she couldn't make an appearance in the next game. She was so beloved by just about all players. It would be really, really cool to bring her back in almost any capacity. Well, except one. Do not make her a boss. Nobody wants to kill Serana. But other than that, yeah, bring her back, Bethesda. Okay, I'm not like a professional bowler, and I certainly don't want to tell Bethesda how to do their jobs, but I really feel like it's not supposed to be this hard, guys. If you're anything like me, You probably believe that the Daedric princes, in concept and design, are some of the best parts of the Elder Scroll lore. Unfortunately, their Daedric artifact quests don't always reflect that. Far too often, a Daedric quest boils down to go a place, kill a guy, get a thing, quest complete. Mehrunes Dagon was the primary antagonist of the Elder Scrolls 4. It all came down to an epic battle between himself and a dragonized Martin Septim. In Elder Scrolls 5, we had to find 3 pieces of a dagger, one of which you could just ask for. Again, Elder Scrolls 4. Who didn't love the Shivering Isles DLC? Many fans say it was the best part of that entire game. But in 5, we got a Daedric quest that could be completed in literally minutes. It just seems like the Prince of Madness deserves better. Hell, to complete Mephalah's quest, the Whispering Door, you know what you had to do? Steal a key. That's it. Such unique and creative Dark Lords should get more than a simple fetch quest or dungeon crawl. I would love to see each Daedric prince be given a huge side story. In fact, and this won't be popular, but I wouldn't even be opposed to none of them being in the base game and creating an entire DLC that focused on all the Daedric princes. Now, of course, ideally, I'd like them in the actual game, but whatever it takes, give these Daedric lords their due, Bethesda. Okay, so this one is hyper specific. As many of you have probably noticed, most player characters have 2 hands. With that in mind, let us wear 2 rings! I used to move furniture for a living. One day at work, we found out we had some equipment that was broken down. So the boss sent myself and another employee to a local hardware store with a company credit card, asked us to get some new equipment. We went, we got the equipment, and we came back. And as soon as we came back, the boss gave both of us unique pendants. There was a huge ceremony. Everybody gathered around, and it was at that moment that we found out that we now ran the entire company. Of course, that story's completely bullshit because that's not how management works. Except it is how it works in the Elder Scrolls. You join a guild or a faction, you run a couple of quests, and suddenly, boom, you're the boss. None of the much more qualified individuals there who've been there for much longer. No, it's you. In Skyrim, you can become leader of the Companions, the Thieves Guild, the College of Winterhold, and the Dark Brotherhood. Despite there being members in almost all of those guilds that are wildly more qualified than you. Okay, the Dark Brotherhood one makes a little bit of sense as you are chosen as the listener, but the others really don't add up. In the next game, if you can become the leader of a certain guild or faction, I feel like there are 2 things that really need to change. 1, you should have to climb some sort of ladder. There should be a ranking system. You shouldn't be able to go from whelp to harbinger in a matter of days. If you want to lead, you should have to earn it. The other thing that should really change if you do take over a faction is how you're treated. I have been recognized by all of you as the one true leader of the Thieves Guild, having helped return it to its former glory. But please, All of you just sit here day and night and send me off on trivial errands and get pissy if I refuse. Now that just doesn't make sense. I would love to see the world change based on your character development and events that take place throughout the game. It's similar to the sort of guild rank thing I just mentioned, but on a much broader scale. Let's say you've completed most of Skyrim. At this point, you have been instrumental in ending the civil war that was dividing an entire country. You're either the listener of the Dark Brotherhood, although to be fair, some people might not know that, or you've wiped out the Dark Brotherhood, which a lot of people would know. You lead the Thieves Guild, which at least a lot of people in Riften would be aware of. You're in charge of the College of Winterhold. You are Harbinger of the Companions, one of the most respected guilds in all of Skyrim. You are a Thane in nearly every major city. Oh yeah, and by the way, you're the first living dragonborn in forever, and you took down freaking Alduin the World Eater. All of that describes you. All of that describes the player character. But yeah, no, sure, I'll fetch your fucking sword. No matter what you accomplish in universe, apart from a few random NPC lines, almost nothing changes. And even some of those lines don't change. I am Harbinger of the Companions, which you know because you're a guard in Whiterun, where our HQ is, so no, I don't fetch the mead. Let me ask you, do you really think a brown-noser like Nazim would keep taunting you after you've reached such heights? Not likely. He's a lot more likely to start kissing your ass. Now, I'm not saying you have to change the character of Nazim. He can still be obnoxious and arrogant. Just change how he's obnoxious and arrogant. And as far as the fetch quest thing, I get that the game needs to give you things to do. I just wish those things developed with you. You can meet Amaran very early in the game. He will ask you to retrieve a sword for him. Okay, honestly, you tell him you'll get it for him, but that's beside the point. So you can fetch a sword for him, take down a couple of bandits, bring it back, get a couple skill bonuses. It's nice early in the game. But it just really seems unlikely that the Dragonborn, a legate in the Empire, would do such things for this kind of guy. So what if you meet him and he asks you to get his sword? But after a while in the game, you've accomplished certain things, so now you have to find something much bigger, and it takes 3 or 4 different dungeon crawls to find. All the way up to the point where, if you've completed most of the games, you can't get a quest from him at all, because you have to find out from somebody else that he and his entire family have been kidnapped, and now you have to go on a whole quest line to find and save them. This isn't really a perfect example, but the point remains that once you've reached a certain level in the game, some of the quests and some of the things that you're asked to do just don't make sense. And on the topic of dynamic world changes, I'd like to see more, well, dynamic world changes. Think about the very beginning of Skyrim. You're a prisoner of the Empire, set to be executed alongside the leader of the Stormcloak Rebellion. Within a couple of minutes of hitting start, we are introduced, to Tullius and Ulfric, the 2 biggest players in the Skyrim Civil War. After that, we are introduced to the dragon storyline. So the Civil War thing seems like kind of a big deal, right? So what happens when you choose a side and help defeat the enemy and bring that civil war to an end? Honestly, not much of anything. Depending on which side you back, a few Jarls are switched out. A handful of NPC lines are changed again, and that's about it. It all seems a bit anticlimactic for the second biggest story of the entire game. Here's an example. What if the city you storm is sacked so hard it can never be recovered? Now, we know in real life, war is absolutely devastating to an area. When you choose a side, you end up sacking either Windhelm or Solitude. And it looks like it. It looks like an absolute war zone when you're going through it. You wait about 2 or 3 in-game days, you go back, and everything's fine. But what if it wasn't? Sure, you might lose access to an entire city, but then it would feel like the war, and more importantly, your decisions actually mattered and meant something. Or what if you lost some NPCs? Let's say you side with the Empire and you take down Ulfric Stormcloak. The next thing you know, there's a handful of NPCs or shopkeepers who just can't stand the thought of continually living under the rule of the Empire, so they leave. Again, you would lose access to some characters, but it would add some weight to the decisions you made in the game. Now again, these might not be perfect scenarios, but I would really like to see the world adjust to the decisions you make, especially when they're usually such large decisions. This is just mean. That's never going to be clean. Let her stop. Okay, so this point ties into sort of the dynamic world and the lore in general. Let me ask you, have you ever played Skyrim as a Redguard? How about a Khajiit? Dark Elf? I'm just kidding. Nobody plays an Imperial. How about a Nord? If you answered yes to 2 or more of those, which I'm sure most of us can, let me ask you another question. What were the major differences in your story experiences? Not your character builds, not how you played the game, but in how the actual stories played out. What's that? They didn't change at all? Pretty much everything in the game was exactly the same, no matter what race you played? Well, that's odd, and really doesn't make any sense. Okay, I get how RPGs work. I understand and respect the idea of being able to be anything and do anything and create your own headcanons. I get it. That's a big part of why RPGs are so much fun. But in reality, without tweaking just a couple of things here and there, it honestly kind of just destroys the lore. Let's start with what is probably the most obvious one. Khajiits are wildly mistrusted throughout Skyrim. So much so, they're not even allowed into the cities. They're allowed to do business outside. They cannot step foot within a city. That's some serious hate and or mistrust right there. But what can you do if you play as a Khajiit? Well, whatever the hell you want. You can walk right into any city, no questions asked. Do business with the vendors, own property, approach the Jarl, and even be made Thane. Thane of a city that your people aren't even allowed in. Sure, I get that this is where the headcanon element of RPGs comes in, but if you care anything about the story and the lore of the Elder Scrolls, that kind of blows up the whole thing. A similar argument could be made of, say, the Dark Elves. When you first arrive in Windhelm, the first thing you see and hear is a Dark Elf being belittled and bullied. And it's not very long before you find out just how absolutely racist this city is and how much they despise Dark Elves. But if you're a Dark Elf, yes, you will hear a line here or there, but you don't get nearly the hate that the rest of the Dark Elves in the city get. You can actually walk right into the palace and join Ulfric's cause. Now that, honestly, makes no sense. All right, so back to the Khajiit. What if, before you could enter a city, you just had to do something, even if it was small? Think of the orc strongholds. If you're not an orc, you can't enter. But you can do certain tasks which will grant you permission to enter. It's one of the few places where your race does matter in Skyrim. Something like that. Maybe you have to help an injured nobleman who sends words to all the holds that you can be trusted. It doesn't have to be that exactly, just something like that. Just enough for it to make sense of why you're allowed to just rock up into any city you want. But I'll take it a step further. What if your race actually affected quests? In My Time of Need is a pretty fun quest from Skyrim. And you can play it, obviously, no matter what race you are. And ultimately, it will come down to two decisions you have to make. Fine, it's a fun quest. There's a lot of debates online about who's right, who's wrong, who's lying, who's not. But what if you played as a Redguard? A third option opened up. And maybe if you were a Redguard, you could open up a whole nother quest line that would get to the bottom of who was lying and who wasn't. Now, I understand that the whole point of In My Time of Need is to be ambiguous. We're not supposed to really know who's lying and who's not. So that particular quest isn't the ideal example. But I think you understand my point. What if things were opened up to you or closed off to you based on the race you played? Look, we're going to play these games 500 times over again anyway. I just think it would be a lot more fun if what race we played changed it up some. I repeat, I am not trying to undo the art of the RPG. Anyone can be and do anything. I get it. But each race does come with their own bonuses. And sadly, some of those bonuses feel pretty pointless. Oftentimes they boil down to skills or abilities that the other races can just learn, so the distinctiveness becomes completely invalid, or they're abilities that are really useful early on, but at late levels, kind of meaningless. Or let's say the Argonians, who can breathe underwater. But how many times in Skyrim were you underwater for more than a few seconds? Actually, I don't have any ways to make this better. I'm not sure what needs to change. I just feel like if you're going to grant bonuses or particular skills and abilities to each race, I really think they should stand out a lot more. Or maybe that's just a me problem. Alright, this one might end up being my most divisive point, but I really don't think that the leveling / skill system needs to be overcomplicated. If you go back to Oblivion, a lot of people complained that it was a little unnecessary. Sure, it worked and you could figure it out, but it was a bit more complicated than it needed to be. Skyrim came along and, in my opinion, completely fixed that. I really like the leveling system that they use. With that said, I've heard people complain about it. Some of your more hardcore RPG fans think it's a bit dumbed down. Then again, these people tend to think the Elder Scrolls is a bit dumbed down. To which I'd say, one, I don't think that's entirely fair, because I think the games are pretty expansive and pretty deep, and I don't think they're dumbed down at all. And B, okay, maybe there's a little truth to it, but that's okay. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. Bethesda isn't going for some super massive, deep JRPG experience. They're delivering the kind of RPG that they're comfortable with. I, for one, love it. But then again, I'm a filthy casual, so I guess I would love it. Look, if things need to be tweaked a little bit, fine. That's fair. I just don't want it to be super deep. I don't want it to require spreadsheets to figure it out. That's just not the kind of RPG that the Elder Scrolls is supposed to be. Alright, so I would ask that we don't have to deal with traversing some giant, easy to get lost in nothing-scape, but I know that's a wasted request. When players said, "Boy, Blackreach is a pain in the ass, huh?" Bethesda's response was, "Oh, that's too bad. Here, try the Soul Charon for a bit and see how it fits." So, in the Elder Scrolls 6, we're going to get lost somewhere. And that, boys and girls, for the most part, are the things I'd like to see in TES 6. I know it probably seems like I was super negative on Skyrim, but I'm really not. I love that game. And when it gets things right, which is a lot, it gets them really, really right. You look at a quest like Diplomatic Immunity. That quest does almost everything right. You can choose multiple ways to cause a distraction. Once you're sneaking around, your race can affect your sneak ability outside. Once you get back inside, you have a decision on whether or not to free a prisoner. You also can make a choice whether or not to save Malborn. If you choose to save the prisoner, he will turn up later in the game. If you do save Malborn, he will turn up later in the game and give you an extra quest. Those are dynamic elements that all come from that one particular quest. I think that's a big reason why Diplomatic Immunity is a favorite among so many Elder Scrolls players, because it offers us so much choice and because it has dynamic elements in it. I guess what I'm saying is I just like to see more quests like that in the next Elder Scrolls game. But you know what? Whatever they decide to do, I can't wait, and I'll probably love it. Alright guys, so what are your thoughts on the Elder Scrolls? Do you agree with any of these points, or am I nitpicking? I'd love to chat about it in the comments. Thanks for watching. I really hope to see you back here for the next one. And remember guys, be good to yourselves. Be good to each other.